The focus this year is on the management of the PAT, right? Because we found that lots of teachers are struggling to manage their PATs in their classes. I think by now we are familiar with how many time or how many weeks we need for phase 1, and we are familiar with what the topic is like and how we should approach the topic, but I find that we still have a problem in the management of the PAT. So just bear with me. I am going to speak a lot about the management of the PAT this year. Right. Just for the sake of the people that are still asking why are we doing the PAT, all right? The PAT actually assesses something that can't be assessed in paper 1 and paper 2. Yes, there is information management in paper 2, but the way that it's asked in paper 2 is not the same way in which it's assessed in PAT. All right? So this comes from the policy document, the NPA. It's assessed during the school year and allows for skills that you can't assess anywhere else from the policy. Right. Then what I did is I took the weightings. Can you all see? Do you want us to switch off the lights? All right. If you look at the weightings, by now your learners are familiar with the weightings, right? So 25% for paper 1, 25 for paper 2, SBA 25, PAT 25, right? So what I did is I went to the ATP and I checked our ATP and I saw, okay, for paper 1 for the whole year, we have 14 weeks. And then for paper 2, you'll see that we've got 8 weeks. That's according to the ATP that we are using, and that's the number of weeks that we're supposed to use to teach this. And then the SBA, how did I get the 4 weeks? In term 1, we've got 2 tests. And then we assume that those tests are an hour each. That's 2 hours, né? Then in term 2, we've got the second test for the second term. That's another hour. Then we've got the June exam for 6 hours, right? So that's 9 now. Then we've got, in term 3, we've got 1 test. That's another hour. That's 10. Plus the 6 hours of the prelim gives us 16 hours. Now, notional time, according to the policies, that we should have 4 weeks of CAT in a week. Or 4 hours at least in a week, right? So basically, one of the reasons I find that you don't finish the content or you don't have enough time is because you don't have 4 hours at least in a week, right? So when you look at this, this is how it's allocated on our ATP. So if you don't have 4 hours a week, you don't have 4 weeks for SBA, and you don't have 6 weeks for the PAT. All right, so please go back to your schools and go check that you do have 4 hours in 1 week. Because if you don't finish, right? And then what you do is you take time from paper 1 or paper 2 so that you can complete the PAT because you don't have enough time. Or then you do extra classes and your kids don't all come. All right, so if I look at this, and you'll see just now, I'm going to break it down even more. Then 6 weeks is actually enough for the PAT if you do it continuously, right? Because 6 weeks is 24 hours, 6 times 4, right? And 24 hours, I think, is sufficient for you to finish the PAT. However, phase 1 needs more time, but phase 2 and phase 3 is fine. We'll see that just now. Right, then, if you look at the marks for the PAT, all right, these are final marks from schools. Now, if you look at school number 1, you'll see that the final mark consists of the exam mark, the SBA mark, and the PAT mark. All right, so the final mark of this school is 40%. The SBA is 35%, but the average of the PAT is 81%. Can you see that there's a problem with the school? This school is not teaching enough. They are actually focusing too much on the PAT, right? If that PAT mark is actually included into the final mark, what you'll see is that that final mark, paper 1 and paper 2, is even much lower than 40%, all right? And if you look at the SBA, you'll see that the average of the exam is about 35% for the year. So what I'm trying to say is you can't make up for teaching with the PAT. You need to get your balance right. You need to spend time on teaching and you need to spend time on the PAT as well. You can't let the PAT try and make up for the final mark. This is a problem. Can you see that? If you look at school, let's skip to school 3 now. If you look at school 3, you'll see that the final mark is 62%. The SBA is 67. So immediately the exam paper 1 and paper 2 marks seem to be higher for school 3. And then the PAT mark is lower. Now we have a problem here too. Here we are spending too much time on the teaching and we don't focus enough on the PAT. Can you see that? So as much as the PAT is going to improve your marks, we don't want school 1, but we definitely don't want school 3 either. Alright. School 2 seems to be normal. Alright. Their final mark is 71%, which is great because the PAT is included there. The SBA marks, so exam marks, are about 60%, which is fine because SBA should be slightly lower than the final mark because PAT is included. And then the PAT is 75. Alright? So your PAT mark should be higher, I agree. But your PAT mark shouldn't be too high because that means that you are focusing too much on the PAT. In the end, when you look at all your marks, you can go and check your school now. You can look at your final mark because you've got the average for last year. You can look at the SBA because you got the average on your mark sheets. And you can look at your PAT. And then if you look anything like school 1 or school 3, then you can see you've got a problem. Alright. Then, these are real marks. I actually copied it from a school. Now, the point of me showing this is that the lowest mark is 41. Can you see that? Alright, then we try and not get a learner less than 50%, but the lowest mark is 41. And the highest mark is 92. That means that there's a range, right? A range of marks for PAT. Now there's a problem if all your PAT marks are sitting between 65 and 70. Or all your PAT marks are sitting between 70 and 75. Or 80 and 85. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that it should balance with the rest of your marks. You can't have PAT marks between 80 and 85, but your final average is 60. That means you're focusing too much on PAT and you are not teaching. Alright? So this is acceptable. If you look at dishonesty, we know what the policy says there. We know that it says learners must not get help without acknowledgement, right? But how much help is acceptable? So we had this discussion during our meeting that we don't want learners to all have the same PAT. In other words, yes, they will all have the same headings for the task definition, right? Because the PAT guideline says that. But inside it, you can't have the same words because then you are giving them too much guidance. What we're trying to say is be careful not to get a copy of the PAT for all learners. I understand that your folders are going to look similar because that's the way you do it in your class. I understand that you're going to have the same headings because the PAT guideline document states that. But what is underneath, for example, the task definition should be the learner's own words. Right? So we had big negotiations during our meeting and it comes down to this. We do not want a copy of the PAT for 50 learners or a copy of the PAT for 100 learners. Alright? Each learner must write his own words. And then we said no over guidance. Right then. How do you stop if learners are not submitting their own work? Alright? How do you stop the copying? How do you stop the copying? Now I want to go as far as to say, how does this copying take place? Right? Because you are supposed to actually oversee the whole process. And don't get me wrong, you do send them home to do certain things, right? They are allowed to go and do their research at home. They are allowed to go and do their planning at home. But are they allowed to finish their whole PAT project at home? There is time allocated on the ATP for that. Alright? So that means that you are in charge of how the PAT is managed in your class. And if there's copying taking place, how did this copying take place without you knowing about it? That's the question that needs to be asked. So how do you stop work, that is, how do you stop learners from submitting work that's not their own. Firstly, you need to be in charge, right? Secondly, you can't let them do the whole pat at home, right? Thirdly, when you give them something to do for homework, for example, they must go and write the task definition, you have to check when they come in that it is not the copy of someone else, all right? So when you give, hear me, I'm saying you can give work home, right? But when they come back, you must check it, right? You can't just assume that they didn't copy. It's children. We know they copied. I would have. Right. How do you stop learners from giving their work to someone else? You need to be in your class checking, all right? You can't let them do the pattern and walk out of your class not go and sit in the staff room and have tea. That doesn't happen anymore. But go to the office and help with the essay Sam's marks while they are doing their pats, right? So basically, you need to be involved when they do their pats. That's the only way you can stop them from copying. Also, they're not allowed to share their resources. Now, if you are the teacher that gives them the sources, right, I don't have a problem if you do that, because not all of us have internet in our classes. But when you give them sources, don't give them 3 sources. You have to give them a lot of sources because sifting needs to take place. If you only give the whole class the 3 sources, obviously there's going to be copying. All right? So basically what I'm saying is, when you give them sources, I don't have a problem if you do. Just give them a range of sources so that at least if you've got a class of 40, learners have different sources when they submit it to you. Okay? Then some teachers are very strict when it comes to this. You know your learners, when they write a word, you know they don't know that word, right? They've never heard that word and they can't spell it, and they spelled it correctly in this specific instance, right? So some of you do that. Just go Google a sentence if you're unsure, all right? But you know your learners better than anyone else. You know what they are capable of writing and not. Also, the final product must be that of the learner. So you can't send them home to go and do the report, okay, and then bring back the report, because you don't know if they actually did it themselves or not. So you need to, unfortunately, find time in class for the report. I'm saying they can go and do their research at home. That's not a problem. They can even do their task definition on a piece of paper at home and bring it in. Or they can even go and plan their spreadsheet or their database or whatever at home. That's not a problem. But when they come into the class, you must check. Right. Then if learners get caught copying and proven guilty, learners will not be resulted. That's a serious irregularity. In other words, and hear me when I say this, not when they are proven guilty, because we had a case once where we know that that learner copied. So we send it out through the province and everybody checked, but we couldn't find where this person copied from. So you got your gut, né? You know that that learner doesn't know how to write this, or he didn't do it the way you did. So you know he copied it from somewhere. So I'm not saying that they should not be caught. I'm saying that they shouldn't copy. All right? So I'm not saying to the learners, please go copy, please go cheat, as long as we don't catch you. All right? No. Right, then the declaration of authenticity is electronic, right? It's one of the things that need to be in the addendum. But all help should be completed at the bottom. Now, some of you let the kids write paragraphs and paragraphs of help and who they got help from and how much help they got from who and so on. That's not necessary. They must just say who they got it from and some kind of something, all right? So if there's any copying, you can go back here and say, but you did not even mention this person's name, and look, it looks the same as that kid in the class, all right? Also, please, this is electronic, right? It's part of the addendum. So they must complete this for phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 and have it in their file at the end. When I say file, they're folders that they submit to you. Now, I know there's a signature at the bottom. Let them just scan in the signature and put their signature there, all right? Alternatively, take that bottom part out and then just let them complete it and have that signature in the beginning in another document or something. But the point is, we are trying to teach the kids not just to do the pat for marks. We are trying to teach the kids here that you need to acknowledge what you do and you need to be honest about what you do. So it's a life skill that we are taking with the pat here, not just the pat. Right, then your job, you should know your job. But in case you don't, I will tell you. Right, you should manage the pat. You should have a planning session, facilitate pre-reading. So in other words, I'm saving the saola. We don't know what that is. So if I choose in my class, all of us are going to save the saola. It's an antelope or something. Then we need to go and read what is this thing, because we don't know. So whatever you decide, you need to give them some background on that. Give feedback to learners. When you give feedback to learners, you need to make sure that they are able to change their paths accordingly. So what I'm trying to say is, don't wait until phase 1 is completely done by everyone before you actually start checking. Because we have cases where kids miss the topic. I had a school once where the kids did pregnancy. I mean, there was no pregnancy ever in any path that we did since I've started. So unfortunately, the teacher only saw it at the end of phase 1. So then the kid had to go and change the topic. Now I'm asking, how did that happen? How did you only pick it up when you started marking? You're supposed to be there. Where were you? Right? Then assess is your job. So basically to mark the path is your job. And then continuous observation, in other words, being control. Your job is to make sure that you know that it's the kids' own path. So this year, we've worked in a declaration. It's there, but we've worked in a declaration that you sign and the kid signs. All right? To say that I believe that it's the kid's own work, and the kid says that this is my own work. So when we do moderation, we've decided that we want to see that declaration for each and every child, signed by you and by the learner. Alright, that's why I said that previous one, if you leave the signature out, it's okay. Then you must keep the people involved and informed, because your parents, and you know that, your parents only get involved the moment that it's phase 3 and they haven't submitted anything yet. So if at the end of phase 1, if that child did not submit, then that parent needs to know, because we are asking you, what did you do? Okay? Then I spoke about the supervised controlled conditions. That means that even if you give homework, then you must check that it is the learner's own work. So there's this thing that you're supposed to do the patting class all the time. Yeah, I know there are kids that don't have computers at home. We have those kids everywhere, right? So, but nothing stops you from saying, go write your task definition on a piece of paper. And then tomorrow when you walk in, just type it. Okay, I know some of them type so slow that it's going to take them the whole period just to type a paragraph. But the point I'm trying to make is, work smart. Give them things to go do at home and then check it the next morning. All right? We asked, what does monitoring mean? Monitoring means you need to check. You need to check everything that comes into your class. You have to mark at the end of each phase, not at the end of phase 3. The first year when I did the PAT, for the very first time in my class, I only marked at the end of phase 3. Phase 1, 2, and 3. Marked at the end of phase 3. I literally sat overnight for 3 nights trying to get everything marked because I had over 60 learners. Don't do that. At the end of phase 1, mark it. At the end of phase 2. And at the end of phase 3. And then I spoke about the declaration from the teacher. You'll find it in the folder that there's a declaration that we expect you to sign as well now. Ne? Okay, this is according to our ATP. Alright, the ATP in Gauteng states that the first 2 days of the term in January, we all know that the kids don't do anything, right? They take books or they go around getting registered classes or whatever. And then in some schools, we get schools where the kids actually start running classes from the very first day. Okay, now you're sitting with this kid in your class, you don't have the PAT yet, you don't know what to do with them because you don't know who's doing CAT yet, for example. So let them just do the folder structure, because the folder structure remains the same. Okay, even if you don't have the PAT, and I know you are asking, when is the PAT coming, when is the PAT coming, when is the PAT coming, right? So The PAT is coming in the first term. If you get the PAT before the first term, that's great. But you're only supposed to start the PAT towards the end of the first term. Alright? So if you want the PAT the previous year in February so that you can have it for the next year in January, you don't need it that far ahead. Right? You only need it between the 5th and the 15th of March. Alright? So even if you don't have the PAT yet, but I'm sure they do by now, it's okay because you're only supposed to start on the 5th of March. Alright? Some of you want the PATs in 2017 for 2020. Alright? You don't need it. You only need it on the 5th of March. Okay, then 2 weeks in the first term, between 5 and 15 March, you'll see that we changed the ATP in Gauteng for 2 weeks the first term. 2 weeks in the second term, that's the beginning of term 2, right? And 2 weeks in the third term, that's the beginning of term 3. In other words, they're supposed to complete phase 1 by the end of the first term. When there's 2 weeks in the second term, it's supposed to be for phase 2, not for the completion of phase 1. Because if you complete phase 1 in term 2, you are behind. Alright? So those 2 weeks in the second term is for phase 2. Right? And the third term's 2 weeks is for phase 3, not for the completion of phase 2. Because now you are running behind schedule, and then all of a sudden you don't finish when you're supposed to be finished. The plan is for the PAT to be done before the prelim exam. Because you know and I know, the kids run and you never see them again. Alright? Then combine PAT with normal teaching works. Alright? In other words, if you do table of contents and you've done your PAT report, tell your kids, okay, let's go do styles, put in the table of contents in the PAT. That's it for the PAT. Alright? Next one, I just taught you the VLOOKUP function. Okay, let's go to the PAT and go see if there's any place that you can use the VLOOKUP function. Alright, insert the VLOOKUP function. Done for the PAT. Alright, so what I'm trying to say is, especially word skills. The moment that you've revised the word skill, go to the report and go actually do it in the PAT. That helps you to finish your PAT in time. I've got lots of schools currently that are putting a third exam in for June. Because what happens is, phase 1 is long. So you don't finish phase 1 in term 1. So you continue with phase 1 in term 2, right? Now you're behind because you were supposed to finish phase 2, right? So for you to finish phase 2 in the second term, you add a third June paper, all right? And it's not a 3-hour paper. It's starting at 8 until 3 o'clock. Paper, alright, and then the kids come in your class and they sit and do the PAT. It works. Then let's see. We know that we're supposed to give a website for marking, and we know we're supposed to give a report. Now, if you tell the kids between 1,600 and 2,000 words, that's a lot. But actually, it's not that much if you put everything together. So don't tell the kids that you're supposed to give a report of 1,600 words. I'm not a wordy person. I can speak a lot, but I don't like writing. So now for me to write 1,000, you know how many words 1,600 words are for you to think out, right? So don't scare them. Just tell them that at the end, we will have those many words. Don't stress. And then the 2. What happens if they don't submit their PATs? We get a lot of queries regarding grades 10 and 11, right? So if they don't submit the PAT without a valid reason, all right, then they will not get resulted. The policy states if they don't submit and they don't have a valid reason, then they shouldn't get resulted. That means that they will fail the grade, all right? So just show it, it's according to the policy. Now, valid reason without a valid reason means that they don't get resulted. But with a valid reason doesn't mean that he doesn't have to submit the PAT, right? With a valid reason means that they just get an extension of the time in which they have to complete the PAT. In other words, those kids that tour for sport or whatever, They go to places. We had a guy last year, or a girl, it was a girl last year that was a performer or something, so she went overseas. She wasn't here for a couple of months and so on. But that doesn't mean that that is a valid reason. But that doesn't mean that that child shouldn't submit the PAT. That child should still submit the PAT. It's just the extension of the period in which that child gets the PAT done. Alright? And then all learners must have a phase 1. You can't let a child that was absent for the whole term 1 come into term 2 and start with phase 2. That's not how the PAT works. So if that child has been absent and they go on accouchement leaves and whatever, so if that child's been absent for the whole of the first term, the moment she sets her toe, do the boys also get accouchement leave? But she sets her toe into the class, then she must do phase 1 immediately. Alright. Again, if a learner didn't submit phase 3, right, that doesn't mean that that child is going to get a 0 for phase 3. There are many marks that can be obtained from phase 1 and phase 2's report. Now, I have situations where the teachers don't mark phase 1 and 2's report because you didn't do phase 3. Now, I don't have a problem if you actually tell the kid you're not going to mark it, but you should mark it. Alright? I know that there's discipline involved, I understand that absolutely, but in front of the child, you will tell him I'm not going to mark it, but you will mark it. You have to mark it. Right, in the event of a valid reason, according to the policy, may be granted another opportunity. So if you've got a valid reason, it doesn't mean you don't have to do the PAT, unfortunately. You still have to do the PAT, but we'll give you more time. And then your time ends 3 weeks before the commencement of the final exam. Now we know our exam starts in October, around the 16th of October. Now technically it's 3 weeks before that. You will use this to tell your kids that. Alright? You'll tell them that the policy says 3 weeks before the final exam your PAT should be submitted. Alright? That also goes for grades 10 and 11, eh? Right, then the marks remain the same, nothing changed. I will focus on the changes as we go along. Okay. And then the computerized mark sheet, I say this every year and I'm laughing at the meetings because every year there's a teacher that didn't do it. When you do the computerized mark sheets, I think they were green last year. I can't remember what color they were last year. Or blue or something, I can't remember. But when you do that, you should write a mark out of 100. Not a mark out of 25. Because if you write the mark out of 25, that poor child is going to get 14 out of 100. That's not good. Okay? No wonder the marks are so low. Because we wrote the wrong ones. Okay, let's talk SAMs. There's a spot in SAMs for the PAT, right? Now SAMs is programmed in such a way that the PAT counts 25% of the final mark, right? Now you've got 3 choices when you capture the marks for the PAT. The one is, this is default. So the default looks like this. There's a raw total for the PAT out of 100. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here and show you that if you insert a mark out of 100, you will use this mark. That's the default of SAMs at the moment. When do you do this? Right at the end when you are finished with your PAT. Okay, so you can do that, put in a mark out of 100, that's not a problem. The second option is, we've got some teachers that actually prefer doing it per phase, right? So when you go to the bottom, you'll see that there's an add activity in SAMs. Those of you that work with SAMs will see. Yeah, at the bottom of this screen, there's an add activity towards the bottom around here. Okay? Then what you'll do is you will add the activities for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and general with the raw marks. Okay? Then just do the auto calculate for the weighting as well. Okay? And then what you can do is, once your phase 1 is completed, you can capture the marks for phase 1. Once your phase 2 is completed, you can capture the marks for phase 2 and phase 3 and the general. And then in the end, SAMs will calculate it to the 25% that it is. If you choose to go this direction, I don't have a problem, as long as your weighting over here is actually auto-calculated, because that weighting will be equal now, and it needs to be auto-calculated based on the raw marks. Okay, that's your second choice. If you do this, please just don't put the date like towards the end of the first term, because once you've captured it, then it's captured. Okay, so rather put that date towards the end of the second term, or like I did, right at the end. Okay, that means that SAMS gives you time to capture it or change it as you go along, because we know kids do that. Okay, the third option is you change the raw mark to 180. Okay, that means that you will give the mark or capture the mark for each candidate out of 180. So it doesn't matter which way you go. SAMS knows that it should calculate 25% for the PAT and then add it to the final marks as well. So whichever way you want to go in SS SAMS, I don't mind, as long as it gets captured in SAMS. Okay. Any questions about SAMS? No. Right. Let's start with the specifics now. Nothing has changed. I used to have a principal that always said, if nothing changes, everything stays the same. So nothing changed, so everything stays the same. Okay? The task definition, the focus question, the research questions, the sources, and the summary, basically the report then, is in phase 1. Phase 2 is the questionnaire, and then the spreadsheet and the database. And phase 3 is the report and the website. Okay? Now, what we did here is help you, if necessary, with the planning of the PAT. Okay? Because what we're finding is that towards the end of phase 3, some teachers are actually still busy with phase 1. Alright? It happens. So, what we did is, or what I did is, I looked at some of these things that we need to do for phase 1. And I tried to allocate minutes to it. Okay, so let's see. I'm guessing that the explanation of the PAT topic takes about 80 minutes. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more, it doesn't matter. Alright? Let's say the task definition takes the learners to complete 45 minutes. Remember, in that 45 minutes is the explanation of the task definition. Eh? So you explain it for, let's say, 20 minutes, and then you let them do it for the rest of the time. Alternatively, you explain it to them for 45 minutes, then you give them homework, then they come back with it tomorrow morning. Alright? The same with the focus question. The focus question is one question. So yeah, thinking out one question shouldn't take you 30 minutes. But the explanation of the focus question and doing the focus question is 30 minutes. Alright? The report, starting the report is 35 minutes. Creating the table, you'll note I gave it 5 minutes because the table is in the folder now. So you actually give it to them. It's in both languages, Afrikaans and in English. You give it to them, they should just complete it. Alright? So creating the table is basically copying it into your report. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. Creating the table on the other side, starting to type the table, that could take them up to 2 weeks to do. Alright? Because we know how slow they are. The research questions, we gave it an hour and a half, right? 90 minutes. The reason I chose minutes and not periods is because some schools have periods of 30 minutes, some schools have periods of 45 minutes, some schools have an hour, and I've got some schools that actually do 2 hours in 2 days. Alright? So we look at the minutes, and then you match it to your periods, and then you do the planning accordingly. Alright, this is just a suggestion. Alright, so you'll see that, let's say, because it's 2 weeks, right? So there's 4 hours in a week. That means that the whole of phase 1 should take you 8 hours to complete. Alright, if everything goes well, we know that. So what I would like you to do is, if you don't agree with this, because I'm sure some of you don't agree with this, right? Is take this and go do your planning to see how long, because you know the kids. You know how long it takes them to do certain things, all right? And then do your planning. And remember, in class, you have 8 hours. So then if you realize that you actually need 12 hours, you need to work in an extra class. all right, so that you are able to complete phase 1 in the allocated time, all right. For example, the suggestion was, let's say we will explain the PAT in an extra class, all right. So we will use that 80 minutes, but we will take it as an extra class and get the kids to come. Then we can reallocate those 80 minutes to the other things so that they can do it in class. The reason why we did this is because we realized certain things take longer than planned. We don't plan for this. Eh? I don't know if you plan for it like this, but you sit in your class and you start the PAT. And then you realize, okay, in my mind I thought, okay, 1 period for the task definition, but now it takes them 3 periods. All right, now I'm behind already. That's why you can't finish phase 1. So take this, go slot in your times that you think it takes for the learners to complete. You'll know better, right? And then by next year, you'll be sure that, okay, it took them 45 minutes, or it only takes 30, or it takes 60, or whatever. And then you've got the management, the planning of it for the years after, all right? Again, let's say your explanation of the PAT topic takes an hour or 2 hours. The task definition focus question, the research questions, and the identification of the sources takes you your 8 hours. All right? Then you need to look at the creation of the report, the table, the evaluation, and the summary of the information in a separate time period. That's why I said work in a third paper, because you might need 4 more hours. So there's where your 4 more hours come from. Some people do it on Saturdays. Some people do it in afternoons. It doesn't matter when you do it. The point is just try and plan for it. Okay. Now, if you look at this, you'll see that phase 1 takes long. Okay, and actually the ATP originally only allocated 1 week for phase 1. We've slotted it into 2 weeks this year and last year, right? So you'll see phase 1 takes long. But if you look at phase 2, you'll see that, and now the times are much more. Creating a questionnaire is 60 minutes, all right? Maybe it's less, but let's give it 60 minutes. Administering the questionnaire is another 60 minutes. In other words, sending it to people to complete it, or having 25 personalities and filling it in yourself, doesn't matter, but we're giving it 60 minutes. All right? Capturing the data is 60 minutes, and you'll see I'm going to do Google Forms this year. All right? So capturing the data won't be 60 minutes anymore if you use Google Forms. Then analysis in the spreadsheet, we gave it 2 hours. All right, 2 hours means in the week, it's half a week. All right, so if your periods are 30 minutes each, then you can have 4 periods in the week for this. Okay, then the database 120, and then continuing with the report is 60 minutes. What I'm trying to show you is there's more time in phase 2 than needed, but less time in phase 1 than needed. All right. Especially in phase 3. Finalizing the report, 240 minutes, because remember we've got 2 weeks, that's 8 hours. All right? So 240 minutes to finalize the report and 240 minutes to finalize the website. Okay? That's a lot of time. You know they love doing the website, né? They take forever to do the website. So get your times and then cut them off and say, okay, by the end of this period, you should be done with your website. If you find you don't have this time, and I'm realizing that the reasons why we can't finish the PAT is because our weeks are not 4 hours. All right? Go check your timetable. If you don't have 4 hours, that's why you can't finish. Because you need 4 hours. That's what the CAPS was worked on. All right? So, go fix this for yourself and your own school. The schools with the LSEN learners, you take longer. I know that. All right? But then you need to work in your extra classes. Then, like I said just now, if nothing changes, everything stays the same. So everything stayed the same. All right? For phase 1, the folder structure, the task definition, a focus question, the questions, the sources, the research methods, the research, the evaluation of the sources, and then starting with the final product. It's a lot. Phase 1 is a lot. Okay. Phase 2 is simple, or not simple, but easier. The questionnaire, the spreadsheet, the database, and then fixing the report. Phase 3 is the same, completing the report and compiling the website.